We're gonna take this plane all the way to the ceiling and drop it and force it to bottom out and crash. All right guys, I'm back, I'm at it, we're working, and I'm working my butt off on Scrappy. So this will be the first video since I crashed Draco, so tears are still falling. But I came out unscathed, and so did everyone else. Total Draco, that will be for another video. I actually really want to spend some time talking about where my failures were and maybe help other people prevent making the mistakes I made. As before, my fault. So at some point when it's not as emotionally challenging and I have a few minutes, I'm gonna talk about where I went wrong on the day I crashed Draco. And there's a lot of speculation and theories out there about what I did. Some accurate, some very inaccurate, that might lead to people to not really learn a lesson from my mistake, but disregard a quick answer that they would never do that really isn't helping them learn from something I would never do, and yet I did it. So another day. Today, let's talk about where I am. I have had much need of therapy because I'm so sad I lost Draco that I've just been cranking on Scrappy. So I've got some filming from before, just a couple days before I crashed Draco, about what I was building on, and that's the video I'm gonna show you right now. And just to kind of get you caught up to speed. And I'm happy, I'm excited, life is good. So I hope you like this update on Scrappy. The Scrappy's probably a little bit further along because I've been working on it the last few days. I've had a weekend free that I could really get after it. That would be a separate video. So I'm back at it, videos are coming. I love you guys, I love aviation, be safe, make good choices, and let's get back to work. All right guys, I got a lot of work to do, so I've only got about 2 hours to work on Scrappy, so I got a small project I'm gonna try and tackle in the next 2 hours. I got this tank online, they're awesome, they're cheap, they're for dune buggies, sandrails, Jeeps, I've used them in the past. They normally sit like this, they got a little drain on the bottom here, and the fill neck here. I'm gonna cut that off, cap it, cut this, cap it, rotate it this way, and this would act as a header tank right behind the co-pilot seat. All right guys, stuff like this makes me really happy because I don't know why. I like building custom things that save a lot of weight. So this is what we made up, this little part right here. I've got it right here in the top of this tank. And the way this works, on the back side I've got bungs going through. They're capped on the inside from here. The bolt pattern for a fuel capacitance probe is put in the top. I've got an inlet, fuel, right wing, left wing, vent, vent, and a capacitance probe. And what's really cool is, you just watch this. This just goes and snaps in there. We'll weld this out. Anyway, and then this capacitance probe is awesome. It's 2 inches too long right now. Once I get that welded, I'll keep putting it in and trim it back. I'll hold it about 1/8 of an inch off the bottom so this never makes contact with the aluminum on the bottom. And then we program this in the Garmin screen, and Garmin is awesome. It's so easy to interface this extra tank. So I'll have a right wing, left wing, aux tank in the back. This is a header tank. The engine will run from a fuel pump mounted underneath this header tank going to the engine. So what's great is both wings drain to this tank. So there's 7 gallons in here. No matter what I do with this probe sitting down the middle, no matter whether I'm slipped right, slipped left, climbing steep or descending steep, that fuel is always sloshing equally to the center of this rod. So it's always going to read accurate in any attitude. And I'll always know the most critical phase of fuel flight. If I'm off 3 or 4 gallons in the wings because they're moving around, they're big flat tanks, it doesn't matter. When I get down to the critical phase, I know exactly what I have left. And the wings, if I'm sloshing, will eventually keep draining that little trace fuel that's left in flat wings down into this tank. So I'll get all my fuel used. So super excited to get this almost done. All right, so I got the tank in. went way faster than I thought, so I got a little more time. So I just jigged this up. I want to put these little rings, I cut these little rings, and this pipe I just put in here as a guide. This passes through some existing fittings. This holds the cable to the rudder, and I just want to add a few more just to get rid of the play. So I'm adding one here, and I'm adding one here, and then I'll drag these bars out. So these are just a guide to make sure I got them straight. I'll slide it down, add one up here and another one up there. That way at every cross section that cable is secure, so it just makes sure it tracks perfect. But back to work. All right, so oil coolers for Scrappy, I got it go in the back of the aircraft because I can't get enough airflow in the front, and I needed the CG moved back. So these oil coolers are going back there. Just cutting out a quick plate, we'll mount in permanent, then I'm going to build fins off of it. All right, getting closer. I got some subframe riveted to the back. I got 4 more to put on the back, some braces on the sides, and we'll put it in the plane, and then we got to build some aluminum airtight boxes, an inlet and an outlet. But 2 oil coolers, Scrappy 780 engine, we're getting close. The oil cooler being in the back of the plane is weird, but it's perfect for weight and balance and for the airflow I need and to get more airflow to the engine. So this is where they're gonna go. We're getting close, back to work. Okay guys, I've had to work all week. I've got a weekend. I'm gonna try and knock out a project I wanted to build throughout the week. Got a couple of days, so here's what I wanna do. I wanna build the tail fork. There it is, let's go to work. No, what I want to do is I want to make a long travel suspension on the tail of Scrappy, so I'm going to do that next. Part of why I want to change it, normally there's a leaf spring right here and a tire right here. And when this tire travels up and down in this direction, there's a pivot point that the tail wheel spins on. It needs to stay perfectly level. If you add a lot of weight to the plane, then that angle changes steep up this way as it bends. If you don't have weight or you've got too much leaf spring and it's bent the other way, the tire doesn't want to turn, so you get in the backcountry and you try and pedal and turn, and the tire gets all jammed up depending on how much weight you've got on it. So there's several things I want to do. I want to fix that, and I want to give this thing the craziest travel ever been put on a Cub. Maybe it's not, but it's going to be a lot. I don't know what's been done out there, but I got my own idea. What we're gonna do is move the pivot point way up here. What that does is I'm gonna try and get upwards of 15 inches of travel, plus the travel of the leaf spring. But if I do it by pivoting it up further up in the airplane and putting a shock here back at the low compression point, then when this moves 15 inches, the angle of that tail wheel swivel will barely move. Even though a leaf spring might only have a couple inches travel, 6 inches travel, if you really hit it hard, the angle changes drastically because the pivot's close. I'm gonna move the pivot really far out, and then the tire just moves like this. The angle on that flat rotation will stay almost flat all the time. All right guys, we're getting close. Fuel tank's in, oil coolers are done as far as I'm really gonna go right now. I'm gonna work on this back shock, so I got duct tape here, it'd probably hold, at least for now. Enough duct tape, we could probably fly with it. Anyway, this is where the shock's gonna go. I'm gonna pivot from here, come back here. My tail wheel assembly is gonna have leaf to a shock. And the reason I'm doing that, I'm gonna have a lot of travel. I want it to pivot at this end. So something like this. Pass through here, this will pivot up. I'm dropping things. This will pivot up. I've got a rubber bump stop I'm putting in right there. And then this piece I'm dropping acts as a beam so I don't bend that plate. That will go there. And then I'm making these little brackets to hold the shock up here. I want to keep it light so it's very thin, but this would eventually cut and wear through the bolt real quick and make a little play. It wouldn't break it, but it would rattle a lot. That'd drive me nuts. So I made these thicker plates. I'll weld these onto it. That will thicken it up where the bolt passes through, and then it won't wear out, not in my lifetime. And that will be the shock mount. So I keep the weight down, the strength where the bolt is. These got to go up top. I got to beam across the two, come down, and then put some more cross bracing. So I got a lot of work to do, but what's going to be really cool is this shock will first have its normal travel. Then if the shock were to bottom out, because I really hit something huge or just suck at landing, which might be the case, this will come up, and right as it's just about to bottom out, the actual swing arm will make contact with the rubber pad. That has some give in it as well. And if that's not enough, the actual leaf spring of the tail wheel assembly will still be, this section of it will still be attached to the back of that. So it's shock, rubber bump, then leaf spring, so that there's no point, no matter how much load I got in this with my gear so far forward, that this frame will really take much of a shock load. So that's why I'm doing so much of this, is I'm gonna have almost all the weight of the passengers behind CG. So I need to make sure this tail's strong. So this is a little overkill. Love my Alaska Baby Bushwheels. If you guys aren't running these, you should. When I made this switch, oh my gosh, it took so much of the bang and rattle out of the back of the Cub. So make the switch, these things are awesome. All right, getting close. Here's the bracket, ready to go. My bump stop. Got a beam back here, little beam here. I'll tie this in, but closer, back to work. All right, we're getting closer. So this is gonna be a bracket, goes on top. You can see these. This is gonna be my shock mount. It's just really simple. My big fat washer I made so that I can weld this out so I don't wreck that bolt later. Lightweight plate, I'll burn that out there. Then I'll build some little mini trusses across here, and then some gussets down, but that will sit that direction. Let's get to work. All right guys, we're getting closer. It's a pretty funky bracket. We got the widened washers welded on there for the bolts. Got everything trimmed out. It's kind of a funky shape, but this drops right here. Locks in right there. We'll weld that up. This is new. Gonna add some coming up to here, and coming back from here, back to the back. So now what's gonna happen, the load that used to be carried on a regular Cub used to all be right here between this location and this location. I'm now transferring the load by adding all this and then tying it up to here and a bar down to here. The shock pressure is going this way to this point is the new load. And they're gonna transfer to this location and this location. So I'm sharing the load between this main intersection and this intersection. So we're gonna really help support that. But anyway, I'm getting excited. This will slide right up in here. Now doing this is gonna add some more work because the cables that run the elevator pass right through where the shock is. So I'm rerouting all the cable pulleys for the elevator down one side, and it'll come right up the side. The bell crank that's back here, instead of being centered, is gonna shift about 3/8 of an inch over, and then we can clear this. So back to work. All right guys, I gotta say something. I'm pausing work for a second. My wife brought dinner down to me. She's the greatest. And she started reading some of the comments from my last video where I showed the propeller. And I just laughed because someone made a comment that I said my propeller was can cavitate from a dead stop, and that's incorrect verbiage. And they're 100% correct. I will probably use incorrect verbiage a lot. I used to build offshore race boats. I built a Baja offshore race boat that was crazy. And it was always props cavitate, and then you get different pitch. So when I'm talking prop, I naturally go to cavitation, but really what's happening is the prop is stalling, and that's very different. And the angle AOA is cutting too hard, and it stalls, and everything's a mess. So I hope all of you got it. And for those of you who caught it, you're the best. I love it. And you know what? I do all this stuff, one take, no edit. I don't script. I sit down and build airplanes. So I promise you, I will screw up all the time. Just go with it. We're having fun. Back to work. All right, I've got the shock mounted up, and now I'm getting ready to build the swing arm back here that goes to the shock. Right here, I've got to make the pivot point that rotates right here. I could use these. This is a great way to do it. This is what's the front pivot point on most Cubs. You would have a bearing bronze bushing and a 3/8 inch bolt, and then you could hook your pipe into here. So I could do it this way, but I'm gonna do something a little different. It's a lot more work. I actually think I might be able to save a little bit of weight. I'm gonna find out just in a little bit. In off-road racing, I always isolated everything with a polyurethane bushing. And these actually are oil infused. Now, they could be expensive. They're like 10 bucks a piece, and I need about 30 of them by the time I do everything you see on the whole suspension system. But if you buy 100 or more, they're $1.25. So you can buy 10 for 100 bucks or 100 of them for 150 bucks. So not much money to buy these. So what it means is a lot more work. So what I'm gonna do, rather than metal to metal contact and no greaser, I'm actually gonna take a bolt, a 3/8 inch bolt like this, right here in the head. I'm gonna drill a hole, an 1/8 inch in diameter, almost just over halfway down the bolt. Then I'm gonna re-drill a bigger hole and tap a pipe thread and put in a greaser. That will allow the grease to be pumped into the bolt, run halfway down, and then I'm gonna drill a hole that passes in one side of this bolt into that other gunnel. So what that'll allow me to do is to put a grease gun on this bolt, pump grease into here, and it'll come out, and then I'll have this, I'll make into a sleeve, and then I'll have this bushing will go into here. So I actually have a sleeve, an oil infused polyurethane bushing, and a bolt that goes in that has a greaser on it. And then I can pump grease in and it'll go into the inside of this polyurethane bushing. Inside the bushing, it has little teeny tiny race tracks. That's to allow the grease to get in and go down the side. So you're greased, a zero tolerance bushing. It's actually oversized, so you have to kind of press fit it in. But then the grease goes through the gunnel, so every time it rotates, you have an oil-infused polyurethane bushing that technically doesn't need to be greased, with grease in it. Now there's no play, no rattle, no metal-to-metal contact, and if you ever have a hard hit, you don't get that rattle or that bang or that shaking. So it's a lot more work. These don't weigh much. I'm gonna see what the weight is when I'm done. Hopefully close, but let's make some silly parts and then we'll make a swing arm. Back to work. All right, so I could just run over to Best Tugs. We've got our own lathe, but I don't feel like driving over there. Right now I'm gonna cut it with this, sand it clean, buff it out. I'm only gonna make 2 for the back swing arm right now. I'm gonna have to make a bunch for the front. I may do a different size, may need a different bolt, so I don't dare make a whole bunch. So for 2, old school. No lathe today. Five more thousandths and I'm there. Got it. Not as fast as a lathe, but both parts made in less time than driving one way to Best Tug, so I'm good with it. Okay, that's the center shaft. I'm gonna plunge a bigger hole through this, almost a 1/4 inch. I'm gonna pass it all the way through. The grease will come through the bolt, in through here, through these holes, into the polyurethane bushings, and that's gonna be my zero tolerance pivot arm, so. All right, this is a moment of truth, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I have no idea what the answer is, but we're gonna find out if this worked. It took me 45 minutes, maybe an hour, because I got on the phone to make 2 of these, and we'll see if it's worth it. Here is the comparison. Standard connection, a bolt not hollowed, not drilled out, the bearing bronze that goes inside, and a nut. Take a look. 244 grams. All right, we're gonna do the equivalent with this instead. A pipe, polyurethane bushings, a center sleeve, a bolt with a hole in the middle, and a weep, and a greaser, and the nut. Woohoo! Sorry, I just yelled in the phone. 208 grams. So I actually have a greaser isolated with polyurethane so I don't get any rattle, no noise, a zero tolerance fit. The insert shaft in the middle, I oversized by about 100 thousandths so that I can actually put this between the bracket, pinch it tight, and there will be no movement at all. The bolt won't move, it's wedged inside the center, and then this pivots on the grease. So this will be a zero tolerance fit knuckle. So that was worth the work for sure. Less weight, I'm excited. Back to work. All right, I'm just making 4 brackets, no point putting it into machines. Nice rusty plate, but it's just surface. I'll cut it out, buff it off, it'll be perfect. Scrap metal from a build I did a decade ago, chrome ollie from a decade ago. It's perfect for Scrappy. We'll make it as good as new. All right, we're getting closer. These are all clocked the way they need to. They're all shaped for the pipes. 2 go to my compression plate, 2 go up to the main frame. So they're 90 degrees to each other. Let's see how this goes in. I'm gonna weld that up now. So I've got a piece of all thread just to hold it and a spacer. All this comes out, but then my greaser bolts will go in right there. And that will be the start of my swing arm. Back to work. Guys, I'm getting close. I've now got my pivot blocks in. This will be the swing arm. It's got a bump stop right here, a rubber bump right there that goes all the way up. And now what I'm gonna do is I've got to build the cradle that catches this end of the shock. So I just cut this out of some rusted chrome ollie I had. And I'm gonna weld this up like this. And then I'll bend it as I go around the block so I don't have any seams, make it a little bit lighter, a little less welding, but that will make a cradle that goes around that. Then I'm going to make a V-brace down here that makes a truss, and that will give me the strength to hook the tail wheel on it. So some more welding, grinding, back to work. All right, this is how to build airplanes 101. Get a bigger hammer. Got it. All right, there's my shock cup. This actually goes up this way, so I'm gonna have to put a little drain hole on the bottom for any water that gets in it. But the reason I did that, this is where it'll bolt through. This will be set up inside here, is so that this could have the most travel possible and get closest to the ground. So the bolt is at the bottom of a V-frame I'm putting in. Probably doesn't make sense, but When I get it done, it will. Success! 2 down, 1 to go. All right, I'm getting close. This is taking way longer than I thought. I just had a weekend to do this project. I got work and I'm traveling all week, so I'm just trying to do it over the weekend. This little part right here took forever. It's got so much shape to it, and you know, getting all this pocketed in and the sleeves done and the bushings and all the little steps is just slow. But anyway, now I'm getting into the easy stuff. This is the biggest part I've got to make so far. It's a little bit hot, but now I gotta bend it and heat it and twist it because it's a compound part. So every one of this is several little parts put together. It's just slow, but it's going really good. Anyway, this is the tail port for Scrappy. It's surprisingly pretty light. It's really thin metal, which made it really hard to build because I put a tube frame and then tube frame with this compounding twisting metal. So I was bending and twisting and welding, and then you're welding a thicker wall tube to a thin wall skin because I want it as lightweight as possible. I got it all done. I got a few little imperfections where some of the seams were right through here, but a little bit more welding, a little bit more buffing, I'll have it perfect. I'm gonna install it and let's drop the airplane. Back to work. All right, we got this side in. This has 0 tolerance, so there is absolutely no rattle I can get out of it because of these bushings. So they're actually press fit and 0 tolerance, so they squeeze in. And this is the wrong bolt, but it's right size, but it should have a smooth end. I've got the shock in now. I've got oil in it, but I've got it at 0 pressure, so there's a little bit of play right now, and of course if it was pumped up, it would go straight down. There's my full down. Full up. This plate hits the bump stop right here just before the shock hits its bump stop. So I got a rubber bumper here, but that sucker is solid. So we're gonna bolt on the tail fork. Take a look underneath here. You can see this. This curve matches that curve. So I actually got to take the shock back out. This bolt goes down in the shock pocket. We'll bolt it up. Try it out. I have a pretty good idea what this should be. Let's see how close it is. From here is my reference. The center of the nut is 22 inches. We're going to push the shock. It's all the way down. I don't have any air in it, so I should be able to press it up all the way till it hits my secondary rubber bump stop. And I'm just going to have to just ballpark across here. Very technical. Roughly 7 inches. 22 to 7. Can I do my math? 15 inches of travel, and that is to the bump stop. Once it hits the bump stop, which it should never hit, but if it does hit the bump stop, then this leaf spring, I've radiused the back side of this, so this leaf spring can still pivot and rotate. It doesn't have as much length as normal. This is just a backup, but it can pivot around that, and I'll get another about 1 inch out of this. So I got 15 to the shock, 16, maybe 17 with the leaf spring. Let's put it up in the air and drop it. I'm excited! Well, I'm not going to bottom it out, so I'm excited, a little bit nervous, but mostly excited. Let's give it a shot. We're going to go with 26 inches. Let's drop it. Woohoo! FAA flight test standards, we're good to go. Let's take it up higher. All right, guys, 3-foot drop test, loaded aircraft simulation. Woohoo! Let's go higher. 4 feet, double normal drop test, loaded. Let's go. Woo! Should we go higher? Yeah, let's go up. Just over 5 feet. We're definitely getting up to probably near the limits, but this is how we know. I want to know here, not in the backcountry somewhere. Guys, we're over 6 feet, and my crane's maxed out unless I change the strap, so hold on a second, I gotta get higher to drop this. 3, 2, 1. Woohoo! So I've got the shock assembly apart now, and I can adjust it myself. A lot of people would just send it in. If you don't know how to revalve a shock, I would just probably ship it off to King. I like to do all my own revalving because I like to keep a variety of different shim kits in, and then I kind of know which way I want to go after doing a drop test. I want to be able to drop this with even more weight at the maximum height and not get the tire to bounce on the rebound. It wasn't bouncing on the lower 5, 6, 7 foot drops, which is more than anything in the real world, but I want it to be a little bit slower on the rebound, and I want to be able to handle a drop from 10 feet to the bottom of the tail wheel tire. So I'm going to revalve it, adjust it with shim packs, change both the compression and the rebound. I'm going to change the oil level so that as it compresses, it increases the PSI pressure quicker than it currently is, and that's done with oil levels and then 2 different shim packs for down and up. So back to work. All right, guys, the plane was starting to bounce, so the setup was wrong, and my shock, even with high pressure, was full extended, which meant I didn't have a soft ride. So now, if you look right now, I still have travel, which means this is going to be like floating on a cloud because I'm mid-stroke with average weight. But when I'm flying, it's going to go to that level and give me all the movement to here. Now I'm going to adjust this little O-ring. This O-ring is only for the purpose to see how far it shoves down so I can kind of track how much movement I have on a bottom out. So anyway, I'm going to set this up here. We'll see how far it moves. But now I've got more oil in here, which means the closer this gets, instead of air, which can compress, and oil cannot, I've increased the oil level, decreased the air pressure, and that's given me this float in the middle with the low air pressure. But as this bottoms out, the air will compress quicker because the volume of oil is taking up the chamber that air would have compressed into. If I were to fill it clear full of oil, it would have no movement. So I'm changing the ratio of oil to air ratio, and that's allowing me to get this soft ride. Anyway, 2 bags. Let's go to full height. We're going to drop it, see if it bounces. And drop, 3, 2, 1. Woohoo! Guys, that was perfect. Absolutely perfect. The O-ring had gotten to about here. I've shoved it back up here to monitor it again, but there was about 1 inch at the bottom. So I still have some range of motion from full height drop, 0 bounce at all. I still have great rides, so we're gonna go further. 3 sandbags. I'm now getting in the area of just plain stupid. All right, guys, so here's my measurement. There's some great drop tests of great suspension systems There's some really great ones online. You can just buy them. You don't need to go to this level. Scrappy is all about just going over the top and just trying something way out in left field. But so most drop tests that I have seen is some guys holding the horizontal at full height, which is about 6 to 7 feet, and dropping it, which if it can do that, that is a great product. You should probably buy it. I'm going to try something. I'm going to measure the equivalent of the horizontal to give you an idea. And at the horizontal, I am about 11.5 feet up. So at 11.5 feet to the horizontal, but I'm fully loaded. Most tests are done, nobody in the aircraft, just letting it fall from 6 feet. We're doing the equivalent of a fully loaded aircraft, 11.5 feet from the same reference point of measurement. Woohoo! All right, guys, this is awesome. I am so far beyond every hope and wish I could ever have. Look at this. I still have a 1/4 inch of travel, and what that means is I haven't even utilized my secondary bump stop right here. So at this point, I'm gonna go one more time. See if we can break this thing. Holy crap, these things are heavy. All right, let's do it. 4 bags. Still got great ride. Still got some up movement. So this is perfect set height. We might break something this time because this is really stupid. All right, guys. This is just stupid. That's ridiculous. We continued doing testing. We went up to 4 sandbags, which is way over gross weight, way more than any plane can do. We dropped it from the ceiling, and everything worked out. The only adjustment I made, I'll show you right here, is I have these bump stops trimmed. I'm going to a different height on this one, and about 3/8 of an inch longer on this one. This bottom's out here now, and then if this goes to full bottom out here, this comes up, and the reason I added length to this bump stop is I finally was able to bend my springs. Not enough that you can see it, but with 4 sandbags dropped from the ceiling, the failure point wasn't any airframe or anything. It was perfect, way better than I'd hoped. But eventually, with that much weight from that height, I was able to slightly change the arc of this spring from hitting so hard. So I put this bump stop a little lower so that it hits this spring right when the spring's getting to the verge of wanting to bend. Now, the reality is there's really not a way I can fly a plane and get it to have the equivalent of a drop fall from 10 to 12 feet at gross weight. It's not a real flight attitude life scenario, but it was just not much more work to button it up. So the tail system, I have no more testing to do. That was a lot of fun. I hope you had as much fun watching it as I did dropping my airplane. I learned a lot. Most of all, I couldn't be more excited. Overall, I give it a 99.99% success, but I'm gonna go ahead and set it up, test it a few more times. I'll do that when I got more time. I'm gonna go home and spend some time with the family. It's been a while, I've been working really hard on this, and I miss them. So we're gonna go see the family. I hope you come back. I hope you like, subscribe, send people my way, see the madness that is Scrappy, because what's coming up next, I wanna get the front suspension done, and I can't wait to try some new things with that. Get these Alaska Bushwheels on the airplane, and see what we can do with suspension on that side of the aircraft. Come back, like, subscribe, follow. Back.